You're listening to DisasterClass podcast by Instinct Ready Emergency Management. All right. So, Wesley, what are we calling this? I have no script. I have no questions. I have nothing. This is? Wow. This is DisasterClass Raw right here.
That's it. DisasterClass Raw.
And who better to do it with than my good buddy, Rob Roberts. Rob, welcome to DisasterClass, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a long time coming. We've been trying to do this for a couple of months now. So yeah, definitely stoked to be here and just be part of this.
What we really want to specifically talk about today, and we're going to have you on again, so this is not going to be your first appearance on DisasterClass. We've got some cool things in the works that we're gonna talk about in the future. But right now, topical. Recently we had these couple big hurricanes through, and from what I understand, you were out there in the response. So where did you end up, and for which hurricane, where did you end up for the response?
So for Helene, I was dispatched to an EOC in Atlanta. It's a national EOC for the private company I work with, and it's huge, multiple rooms, big amphitheater room, the whole FEMA thing. It's not FEMA, but same playbook. And we're sitting there and they're asking us questions like, hey, do you know this? Do you know what's going on in Asheville? Do you know what happened in Hendersonville? And everybody's like, no. So we start picking up the phone, trying to get a hold of, calling the sheriffs, calling the EOCs up there, calling everybody we can. Nothing. Lines are dead. Not even voicemails. It's just nothing. So we're sitting there and you go to social media, start doing your data mining, you start using every tool in the toolbox. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, how far is Asheville from here? Again, still kind of new to Charleston and this area. They're like, 4 hours. I was like, okay, well, I have a Jeep Wrangler and I'm tired of sitting here pretending like we know what's going on.
Yeah,
I'm going and I'll call you guys. So the company was like, okay. They threw me a Starlink. They gave me a gas card, and they said, good luck. And I said, okay, bye. So my first stop was Hendersonville. It was still half underwater.
Wow.
We're still cars underneath mud. I made contact with their EOC, and just between the missing persons list, the DOA list, just everything in between, their resources, their crews were zombies from running the last 48 hours. It was literally like walking into a movie. You're just like,
what is going on?
Especially from being in Atlanta where everything was fine.
Right.
Everything was fine. The it was just another day.
Yep.
And I get there, I'm just like, what is going on? Hopped in, did a little EOC work as a volunteer, just showed them my credentials and helped out a little bit. I then got a call that I had to, part of my job is we also do crisis management. So when there's a crisis for the client, we kind of go ahead and we help out in whatever way we can. So in this particular situation, one of the clients needed to be evacuated. No one had heard from them, no cell phone contact, no nothing. So I was given an address and I was given another good luck.
Pat on the back.
Off I went. I had to get from Asheville or Hendersonville, which is underneath Asheville, over to Avery County. And in order to do so, normally it's like an hour and a half. Just the way the roads are and everything like this. It took me 7 hours. I had to go back down, all the way down to Charlotte, all the way up. I got turned around for a couple of hours, trying to go through Boone and everything like that. And finally I get to the client. I knock on their door. At this point, I had ripped my jeans, which was the worst thing because I was in like field attire, had jeans on and I had my Salomon boots on and my baseball cap. And I had so much in and out of the Jeep. You know, I was carrying my weapon and stuff like that, and I just hopped in the Jeep too quick. My jeans ripped, and it wasn't like a "oh, it's okay" rip. It was a
oh, one of those rips. One of those rips.
Yeah. So I had to throw slacks on, and then I had kind of like a 511, not tactical shirt, but like a field shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then that didn't look good with the slacks, so I had to throw a polo on.
Right.
So I get to their house, and they're like, "Are you a salesman?" I was like, "No."
It's like Vegas.
I'm here to evacuate you. I'm not here to sell you anything. Like, you're missing, and people are looking for you, and we need to leave.
I'm your boat. I'm getting you.
Yeah, I'm your boat, essentially. But the crazy thing was with that was before I got to their place, I quite literally had to beg, borrow, and steal to get to their address. EMS, all resources were so just backed up, just so thin. It was incredible. And the way people were helping each other and the way everything was being conducted, you saw in real time all of our training taking place and why we get trained the way we do and why we've gone through some of those dumb classes that we sit there and roll our eyes with and we're like, we're never going to do this. It was being done. And when I got to one of the parts of the road, there were 2 deputies and a fire guy there, and I was like, hey, I need to go to this address. And they were like, you're not going. I was like, I don't think you understand. I'm going to this address. This is where I'm letting you know.
Yeah, FYI.
FYI.
This is where I'll be.
2 Gators rolled in, 2 UTVs rolled in, and they had patients on them.
Mm.
And I looked at the guy. I was like, hey, listen, if you need help, I can help you. And he was like, I'd appreciate that. So, you know, I still have my EMT, so I went and helped them. It was a COPD, and it was like a fall down, go boom. So nothing pressing, no trauma or anything. After they get loaded, the bus comes, takes them away. He then looks at me and goes, where can I get you? Thank you for helping. Now what can I do for you? And it was in that moment that I realized that the mountains have different rules. And as long as you come with no expectation and you help the people of the mountains, they're going to help you back.
Yeah.
Mm. You know, thankfully I got my clients out without a problem. Everybody got to safety. I came home, we got told to stand down, and I went back up the next day. I hooked up with the fire department. I started doing emergency management for a private operation that was going on there. A bunch of special operations guys. Sentinel Foundation. Most amazing human beings I've ever met in my life.
Awesome.
And it was it was an absolutely incredible experience. Incredible experience.
I got a ton of questions. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about it through the filter of our listeners, right? Jason and I kind of have a back and forth. So from like the everyday person standpoint, what were the roads like?
There were places where there were no roads. They were gone. They were just gone. It wasn't like part of the road caved in, or there was kind of a wash away. No, like there were parts of just existing roads that were just gone.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because there was twice that come to mind where I pulled up and I looked at my phone and I was like, you know what it was kind of like? The episode of The Office when he's looking at the GPS and he turns right because the GPS turned right and he turns into the lake.
The lake, yeah.
That's what it was like, but it was because there was no road there.
Right.
It was incredible what the water did, what the washout did to these towns and cities. And these people just had no, it wasn't that they didn't have the ability, they couldn't even start anywhere.
Right.
To get out at a certain point. So the roads themselves, and hats off to those highway guys who were able to put stuff back together, because that was
Wesley and I, we used to teach, well, we still teach our community emergency planning class where we help civilians, everyday people, to be able to put together all the things that they need to for this type of event, right? An evacuation, go bag. And it's funny when we're having, because it's, we do live classes and we have live discussion with people. And sometimes the perception of what things are going to be like, it's like we take certain things for granted.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so to just like, yeah, there'll be roads, right? No.
Right. So let me give you a for instance, Rob. Like literally, I've had this discussion with people, and we try really hard. We have the opportunity and the privilege to spend time and effort really thinking about these things and researching them, right? Not everybody else does. The people that come to our class, they're taking our class because they haven't necessarily thought about this before, and we love that, right? So we want people to come to the class, come to it raw. We will teach you the things you need to know. But like literally, I remember it wasn't an argument, it was just a discussion. And I tried really, really hard not to make them feel bad. Like, because again, these are paying clients, right? You're taking your class, you don't want to make them feel, that's not the goal. The goal is for us all to learn something and learn together, right? And they were literally like, okay, so do you guys sell go bags like with wheels on them so I can wheel it behind me? And I just literally, I like paused and I was just like, hey, let me just, again, we talked about product creation, and in creating this vision, I didn't realize the mindset that my customer might have. So I'm like, in your mind, when you're evacuating, are you seeing a perfectly paved road? Like, that must be what your concept is of evacuation. If you think you can take your luggage that you go traveling with the wheels on it, and that's going to help you. I'm like, okay, so let me just help break that down. Because when you're evacuating, it means the resources at your location are either gone or can't be replenished. And if they can't be replenished, it's because there's no proper ingress and egress to your location. So to think you're going to have a wheeled buggy on perfectly paved roads to evacuate would be wonderful. Like, I hope that is your experience, right? And like, I pray for you that that's all you're going to have to deal with.
Right.
But chances are,
no,
that's not what it's going to be like. And you mentioned some gear, because this is another component that I talk about. You've got your go bag, and then I always talk about having go gear. Like, say you're a businessman in your shirt and tie, and that's when it hits the fan and you got to get home or you have to evacuate in that, and you're like in loafers and a shirt and tie. Like, that's not what I want to be evacuating in. That's not the gear that I want to be able to do this trek through an area where road used to be and is no longer because of the washout, right? So you mentioned a brand. It's so funny you mentioned Salomon boots. I know that they're a brand that I love Salomon. I'm planning all of my gear, and I'm going to be sharing this with, our fans and our audience in very short time, what the perfect gear setup for me is. And it's going to be different for everybody, but I've already selected my Salomon boots, and then finding like it's funny you mention it, some ripstop pants, that I'm going to have as my go gear, and then proper upper attire, outerwear. Like, there's value in really putting yourself in this situation and looking at all of those components to help you be prepared, in addition to what you're going to have in your go bag, and perhaps in your car, in order to facilitate that. So the pictures and the videos and your experience, this is extremely valuable, because we're going to be able to share this with individuals who may not have a concept of what these things are really like.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I really am, because here's the reality of what took place. I'm a prepper. I feel like everybody in emergency management knows the realities, knows what can happen, and we prep. Okay. Yeah. I don't have a cellar full of canned food, but we're good. Especially the three of us with our backgrounds, we're solid.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff I threw away, this is going to be crazy, but I evac'd. It was a family of 4 and their 2 dogs in a Jeep Wrangler. I gave them 20 minutes because the roads were giving the little mound of dirt that I got over with my Wrangler to get to their place was crumbling. It just wasn't packed, and I was like, we need to get out. We don't have time. I gave them 20 minutes. They went, mind you, the way I made contact with them, because their driveway was washed away, and the road, the kind of the rain gutters on each side of the road, those were completely washed away. So there was no way to even get to a driveway that didn't exist anymore. So I had to hike up the mountain to their house. It's about 1/4 of a mile. And you know, you guys know how much I love hiking. Long story short, they put their bags in garbage. They put their clothes in garbage bags. They got a bag of dog food and they put it in a garbage bag. They came down to the car. In order to fit everybody, I threw out $400, $500 worth of gear that was sitting in the back of my Jeep off to the side of the road because there was no use for it. And everything I had in my go bag and had in my like longevity bag, half of it didn't get touched. And it put such a wild perspective of what we need versus what we think we need and what we're just absolutely sold on because we saw it in REI or someplace. It's incredible. The $500 probably worth of equipment probably would have just sat in my car the rest of my life.
Yep.
Because it's stuff you're never gonna need. Never.
Listen, it's so funny you say that. So we've been talking about, before we came on camera, Rob, you and I were digging deep into the entrepreneurial life and to breathing life into something that you've built that wasn't there before.
Right.
And with how Instinct Ready started was go bags, and we were doing pre-made go bags, and we liked it. I do like the product. We got good reviews. Our customers enjoyed it. The thing that made it different than anything else that was out there, a couple things. One, it was our internal modularization system. Just so that a lot of times when you buy a go bag, and I'm not making this a whole sales pitch.
No.
A lot of times everything's just dumped in the center, and there's no way to organize your internal components of like what's health and hygiene, what's first aid, what do I need for tools and communication, right? So our internal modularization system, but we tried to keep as much bloat out of the bag as we could as we built it from the ground up. Right. And then we're selling it to people. And I think we did a really, really good job, but there's always going to be some bloat. Like you're saying, there's always going to be something that you don't need. So we've transitioned. We've kept the thing, again, user feedback, right? Just push the thing out. Like people were liking it, but here's the feedback that we got. What they loved was our internal modularization system. And the requests we were getting was, look, I like your bag, because we put a lot of thought into the external bag, the shell, and then the internal components that fit inside of it. And they all fit within the bag in a very, very specific way. And then I made sure we got our bags designed especially for us. I increased the size by 2 to 3 inches so that there's a specific, pretty decent 2-person tube tent that can fit completely inside the backpack when it's zipped. Instead of having it bungee to the outside on the bottom, it can fit completely. And I've never seen that anywhere. There's still to this date on market, I've not seen any bag like ours that has a full tube tent inside the carrying system, which a lot of people appreciated. So we kept the same bag dimensions and the pieces, but now what we sell is that's it. It's the outer shell, and then it's the modularization system, all empty. Because now the concept is you build it yourself.
Yeah.
Right. We called it the U-Pack, but we packed it. So now it's a U-Pack and you actually pack it. So we give you the system, and then you put in it what you need for where you live and for who you are. Yep. It's completely customizable to you. So it's pretty interesting because a lot of one of the other services that we provide, we do like go bag parties where people invite me and I bring my personal gear, and then they bring all their kits and we go through them together and we just talk, and I just like, okay, this is really cool. And it kind of like what you're saying, you're probably not going to need that. You definitely don't need that in triplicate. Sure, one of those might work. You don't necessarily need 10 of them, right? It's just, and I go through and I, as an expert with them through their bag and help them clean out the bloat. And it's really cool. Like I'm gonna rope you in on some of that now that you've seen it in super real life. It's like, bruh, half this stuff, you don't need it.
I was thinking, like, I think Rob's gonna have to keep making an appearance when we start going over the minimum survival standard and all that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
It's incredible, man. Just
Yeah.
the lessons you learn in real time with stuff like that, and you're just like, you could read again, like we were just talking about, over 100, actually I think it's over 150 FEMA IS certifications. None of them taught me what I experienced in the first.
And none of them prepped you for what you saw.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was close.
So I just want to interrupt for just a moment to say thank you to Sawyer Products for sponsoring this episode of DisasterClass. I personally love Sawyer Products. I've been using their water filter and insect repellent for years. Every time I go camping, hiking, spend any time outdoors, I've got my Sawyer Products there. I keep a water filter in my go bag. That way, if anything happens, I know it's there when I need it. So whether you're in the backcountry, the backyard, you're on the trail, or doing humanitarian relief, Sawyer Products are making an impact. In fact, every Sawyer product you buy is a contribution to their common humanity, bringing clean water programs to people in need, domestically, internationally, and through disaster relief missions all around the world. So visit Sawyer.com today to learn more and to find a retailer near you. So maybe just based off your experience, because I want to kind of transition in a minute, but based off of what your experience with the hurricane response from the personal civilian level, what were like maybe your top takeaways, your top lessons for our listeners? That's like, okay, if you're thinking about getting ready for a disaster, hurricane, whatever, what are the key takeaways for the personal civilian level?
So the first thing, and this is going to be kind of hypocritical because, I'm not in the best of shape. But fitness was huge. Fitness was the number one thing. There were so many situations, and obviously, I'm in good enough shape where I held my own and did what I had to do. But there were a couple situations where, like, for example, we were doing SAR work and we were getting driven around in UTVs and stuff like that. And we asked one of the guys, like, "Hey, can you go?" And he was like, "No." Like, what do you mean no? He's like, "I physically cannot, like, go do that. Like, I'm too out of shape to go do that." And he was just like, "You just became a liability." And
right, you're no longer helping.
Personal, like, no one's mad.
Right.
And again, like, I feel like being in that boat a little bit, like, it's hard for me to talk, but I can say firsthand that, like, oh, that's real. Like, that's not just something that's preached on. Like, that's real life. If you cannot handle your own physically, then you're kind of you're a liability. And it's that sucked to see, because some people, it wasn't their fault, obviously. Some people just have certain diseases or just issues that they can't fix or anything, but some people, they can, and you're just like, you can't help us. And they wanted to, and they came to the place we were operating, and they were like, "What can we do?" And nothing. Like, you can't help us right now because you're kind of a liability, and that sucks. Especially what's going on in the world today, in our country, we have this huge divide, right? That didn't exist.
None of that mattered in the mud.
None of that mattered. Yeah. We're feeding everybody, and they were making sure everybody had warm blankets and clothes. And do you know how important that is during that situation? Everybody had a purpose. Everybody had a purpose. And it was the most beautiful thing to see, was just everybody come together. It was amazing.
The community coming together for a common purpose. Yeah. And that's right. It doesn't, for the emergency management, emergency, like, no, it's all about the helping the people, right?
Yeah. It's about the community. At the end of the day, it's about the community, and all of us are members of that community. So the beauty is, all of us have the opportunity to find value and bring value to the community that we live in.
It happened. It happened. And to see it, I've been one of the skeptics of, like, who knows what's going to happen? Dude, everything right there was just like, we're okay.
Yep.
We're okay. We're going to be okay.
So just to transition a little bit. So we talked about the civilian end. Now I want to kind of talk about the organizational, right? So maybe like businesses, organizations, or that community, maybe agencies, right? Because one thing you were talking about earlier was, like, you're in the EOC. and you had no contact with the people that you need to be contacted.
In Atlanta, you were blind. Yeah.
So my question is, what were the major, I don't want to say fail points, but what were those points where it's like, wow, because of this, we had this issue, or this worked, this didn't. Seems like, I think with every after action, it's communication is always the big fail point.
Yep.
But what were your experiences as far as that on the organizational level?
Well, that was that was the major one. You hit the nail on the head, and it's a great question. But communication, but to a point where I've never experienced before. There was absolutely no cell service, landlines. There was nothing. Radios weren't working. And anybody who knows the mountains knows that hollers aren't getting any cell service as it is, and 911 systems are spotty. Everything was out to the point where PDs and FDs were using their radios, and they weren't even working because the repeaters were out. So
at best, they had point to point. What's the range on that? Yep, without a repeater,
it was impossible. When I got from Hendersonville, no service. I got into Charlotte, had service, had to download maps. When I got back up into Avery County, as I got up into that, it just disappeared. You're just on your own. And I think that's what made everything very surreal, was like, oh, hey, there was a time we were young enough. We didn't grow up with cell phones, but it brought you back real quick of like, I can't call anybody. There is no 911 to call right now. And it was scary. It definitely was a reality check. I'll tell you right now, Starlink played an absolute huge role in everything. Starlink in real time do absolutely incredible things. That was the major reason why Sentinel and other groups like Sentinel who had EOCs in the area were so successful, because they had donors who got them Starlinks. Mm-hmm. The way I got roped into it, I just went there for medical. Hey, I'm an EMT, what can I help you guys with? Yeah. And next day, they had me going around setting up EOCs in different counties with Starlinks to get everybody on a communication network. So there was a point in time I came up to them, I was like, hey, listen, there's this little compound doing thing we're doing down in Black Mountain. What do you want me to do? They're like, good, go hop on a Blackhawk, a helicopter, take X, Y, and Z with you, and go figure it out and come back and let us know how it went. So I took one of the doctors with me. We went down there. He set up the medical kind of clinic down there just to make sure the nurses knew what they were doing and the medics there knew what they were doing. And I sat with their team and set up an EOC and kind of like, hey, listen, this is the playbook. This is what we're doing, X, Y, and Z. You guys need to get on the same page. And then you guys pass it on to the people next to you and so on and so forth. And by the time I left there, 2 weeks later, every county had their official EOC, but had a kind of civilian EOC as well, where all the people from the hollers and everything like that were coming to and getting supplies and getting food and water and stuff like that. Because FEMA was, how do I say this correctly? Well, here's the reality, right? No one ever thought a hurricane would wipe out the mountains. That no one was ever prepared for that. You know what I mean? I've never taken a class talking about that. That's never been a what if.
Hurricanes.
Right. So the organization that you're asking about took place underneath the 911 level of the counties by the people. And it was just community leaders, it was churches, it was volunteers who just stepped in and made things practical until communication came back and life started to get a little bit normal. So the organization was chaotic, to say the least. Yeah. But it was done by professionals, and I will say they turned chaos into a symphony that worked and was beautiful. And then all the official people finally caught up and were able to hop back on the train.
So great explanation, Rob. I truly appreciate you breaking that down for us. The reason I was smiling a little while back is because this just goes right along with something that we've been preaching at Instinct Ready and Disaster Class for a long time, where you're the help until help arrives.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And as EMS providers, we know that, right? We know that on a blue sky day, average response times in a city with really good coverage is 7 to 8 minutes before the ambulance gets to you. And I don't know where they get that number from. I don't think I've ever done a 7 or 8 minute response time, right? Like, let's be real. But on paper, 7 to 8 minute response time. But in those 7 to 8 minutes, we've always preached for medical emergencies that you're the help to help arrive. So we've talked about getting bleeding control kits, getting something to get ready, getting yourself some training, staying prepared so you can help. And I've always said this, it's not the most popular thing, but because I am a first responder, but I always say the first responder is the person that called 911 because you had to respond to call 911. And like that first person has to make that phone call so that help is on its way. While help is coming, you are the help. And that's why with Enhanced 911, you're going to get someone that EMDs, they might help you go through a scenario and help someone on the phone. They might help you voice treat that and tell you what to do. Either way, you are the first responder. And that's what our biggest thing is at Instinct Ready. We are trying to increase civilian capabilities. That's it. That's what we want to do. We want to give you 3 things. We educate, we prepare, we equip. We want to give you the education so that you guys have everyone has an understanding of some things that they can do. Prepare you, giving you that readiness mindset so you're ready for things, keeping you abreast of what's happening, right? So that you know that you might be called upon. And then all of us as EMS, we know if I don't have my ambulance, my training is only going to get me so far if I don't have the tools to do the job. When I have the tools, I can get the job done. Now, if I've got really good training and experience, I can find a way to fabricate the tools that I need. I'll make do with what I've got. But if we can help equip you, we feel now you've got a better chance. And the same thing goes not just for medical emergencies, for just preparedness in general. Right. And this, folks, this is what we're talking about. You gotta stay ready to be ready. Like that's the thing, people. Like, and that's what we're trying to. I hope you guys understand the passion that we're talking about right now, because it's not that all of this stuff is preventable, because it's not always preventable, and there isn't always going to be an early warning system, and there isn't always going to be the ability to evacuate well before you're in harm's way. Right? Stuff is going to happen, and it might pop up quickly, and you're going to be in it, and sometimes you can't get out of it. You just have to go through it. Right? So what we're trying to do is help folks be able to go through it. That's all we're trying to do. And that's why we're bringing you stories, experiences like this to let you know how it really is so that you can take the appropriate measures so you and your family can remain safe. And then you might be able to help someone else if you're super prepared. And that's the goal, because you hear the common theme. You know, we talk about all the time in emergency management, whole community. It's kind of like a buzzword. It matters. The people matter, and every single individual can impact the community as a whole for the good if you are personally prepared.
100%.
Yeah.
100. You couldn't have said it better. The way you put that, if anybody takes anything from the conversation here, is I don't want to say no one is coming, because I feel like that's a failure on our end. You know, as long as people like us, someone's going to eventually try and come for you. But the reality is like, we didn't reach people for days.
Right.
When we were doing SAR work, everything that came in was a tip. And it was people coming to the EOC going, hey, my neighbor's house isn't there anymore. Or, hey, I haven't seen my X, Y, and Z for 3 days. And it's like, cool, now we have to go find them. Now we have to go do SAR work. And then that led into the fire department. You know, I got roped up into them, and we'll touch base on that. Their crew started doing wellness checks. You have cancer patients there. You have people on hospice. You have people with GI issues, like real GI issues. You have people who have this problem and that problem. That doesn't go away. That doesn't stop because there's a catastrophe. Now you have to take all that. Yeah, all those frequent flyers, guess what? They still go.
They're still flying.
Still call. So it was so. I had a crew. I had 2 specialized crews. One was 2 females, both 19-year-olds, both EMTs, who would go every day to check on this woman because she would quite literally try and shoot at anybody else who wasn't, because she wasn't familiar with anybody else.
Right. If I don't know you, you get shot.
I'm not shot. Yeah, thanks. So they would do wellness checks on her. And then there was another group of, I would say 3 or 4 who were hospice and stage 4s.
Yep.
And it's just like, do you know the resources it takes just to deal with that? Never mind a disaster to play along with that. So people have to, and I truly hope that your listeners do understand, no one's ever going to be 100% ready, but you got to have the tools and you got to have the knowledge to be able to.
Even if you don't have all the things, it's the mindset.
No.
It's the understanding that it could happen. Because I think the scariest thing, the biggest cancer is it can't happen here. That's the worst. That's the worst, most detrimental thinking that we can have, and that's what we're trying to fight. Stop saying it can't happen here because it can. And it was just proven. When it does, you've got to be ready for it.
100%. 100%. I don't think that could have taken place anywhere else, and the same results would have happened. I think the willness of the people from those mountains and the resources that they had and how they're used to that type of life is what kept them afloat. And it's kept them chugging along and rebuilding. I don't think there's too many other places that you could have a catastrophe on that level that they're not ready for, happen overnight, and then bounce back like that. And that's not throwing shade at anybody. That's just saying, like,
it's giving them credit. Let's keep it positive. We're giving them credit for the way that they live and their readiness, right? Let's just, we'll keep it positive. And that was phenomenal for people in that area. Awesome.
100%. Yep.
Well,
we will. It's not today. No, Rob, you're coming back, bro. You know that, right? Like this is just the tip of the iceberg, man. Like your experience from every aspect, right? As a first responder, whether it was EMS, whether it was fire, even though it was volley, whatever it was, then moving into the police work, like. Then getting into emergency management, like all of your experiences, man, you're a national treasure. And we appreciate the opportunity. And thank you so much for spending some of your time with us.
All right, boys. Thank you so much.
All right, man.
This episode of DisasterClass was hosted by Jason Perez and Wesley Long. Episode written, directed, and edited by Jason Perez with a special appearance by Rob Roberts. Copyright 2024 Instinct Ready Incorporated, all rights reserved.